Well, hello everyone. It is approximately 1:15 in the afternoon on the 10th of February, 2025, and we have just overcome Super Bowl weekend. So for those of you who might have made money on the game, great job. Take your families out to dinner. I'm sure they would appreciate it. And for those of you who lost money on the game, well, 52 weeks from now, you'll get a chance to do it all over again. But hopefully you didn't lose too much money. Today's topic is going to be about courage. And as we saw by yesterday's game, the winning team, they talk about, how much they love each other, how much they play for each other, how much they need to be for each other to be there for a team. And that's great. I mean, that is what winning teams are all about. I'm sure that if the Kansas City Chiefs had won instead, Travis Kelce and would have said the same thing about his teammates. I mean, that's how good you have to be to play at that particular level. But a lot of people just don't watch the Super Bowl for the football. Some people, you could say good or bad, they watch the Super Bowl for another reason. And that is simply because of the commercials. Now, the commercial that I remember most from any Super Bowl was the infamous Apple commercial. And that was when a young lady who was wearing, I remember she was very fit and very toned. She was wearing like this white bodysuit with orange shorts and white leather shoes, and she was carrying a sledgehammer. And she's running down this aisle, and there was this line of trogs, in there, oh. And suddenly she goes and she stops. She whirls around and throws this sledgehammer in what is a giant screen and just blows the thing up. And the end of the commercial, you see the Apple logo. And it was like Macintosh is coming or something like that. But that was the introduction of the Macintosh. They only showed the commercial once. I'm sure it's been replayed thousands of times in marketing and advertising classes as a classic. But the whole thing was this lady had the courage, this young woman had the courage to break down the norms in order to do something new. Well, there was a rather unique commercial that was on last night that surprisingly did not involve any sort of product, but it was about courage. And for those of you who missed it, take a look.
America was founded on an idea of freedom. America's always stepped forward in time of need throughout our short but powerful history.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Tear down this wall.
We've been there for all of it.
Second plane hit the tower.
Our heroes are humble. They have an inner pride to keep this idea alive. Protectors are born, they're not made. America's Secret Service protecting this Super Bowl is asking a few more to step forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is courage. Now, probably the most famous ex-CIA agent that's out there is Dan Bongino. Dan, I believe, served well over 10 years in the United States Secret Service. Previously, he was a policeman in the NYPD. And I know that Dan, from time to time, gives his opinion about the tactics of the Secret Service and that sort of thing. Actually, I was kind of surprised that Trump did not ask him to be his director of the Secret Service. However, he has made a decision. He actually picked someone that was off of his detail that happened in that tragic event in Butler. But we certainly want to recognize not only the courage of every single Secret Service agent, but for all of our people who go and serve this great nation in some sort of capacity that put themselves in harm's way for all of us. Thank you, one and all. But as I transition, what I'd like to do is introduce you to another person of courage. This gentleman over here, his name is Shawn Ryan. Shawn is a former United States Navy SEAL. He is a former contractor for the CIA. And I met Shawn virtually this weekend in an interview that he did with another person, which I'm going to highlight very soon. Now, Shawn is doing something that some people may say it's crazy, but actually it's quite logical. He is building a media empire based not on gotcha questions or gimmicks or look at me first, but he's doing the old-fashioned way. He's doing journalism by asking insightful questions, by looking at his subjects straight in the eye. And surprisingly enough, his manner is such that not only they trust him, that they're willing then to disclose more about themselves than probably they would. Now, this is a gentleman who has a tremendous amount of self-confidence, but yet that self-confidence is subdued, unlike what we find in the mainstream media, where everything is about Q-score. Little sidelight what Q-score is. I have a friend of mine that works as a journalist in the local Atlanta market. And I came across this article about Q-scores. And what Q-scores are the ability for the public to recognize this person's name. So, for example, if I mention the name of George Clooney, I'm sure that there are a whole lot of people that would recognize that name instantaneously. But if I was to go and mention my name, for example, probably very few people that would recognize that right out there. So therefore, I would have a very low Q score, whereas Clooney has a very high Q score. Well, I went in, I asked my reporter friend, I said, his name was Randy. I said, Randy, you know what your Q score is? He says, well, I have an idea. I said, how much of an idea? And he said, well, I'm currently renegotiating my contract. See, that's the thing. For reporters, the higher the Q score, the better contract they can negotiate. Because obviously it's all about eyeballs. Excuse me. So, now how do we get to Shawn? Well, Shawn has, I believe, got over 2 million followers or views on YouTube. He is now in the process of building another studio. But he's doing it, and his success is based on the premise that he is just asking good questions and wants truthful answers. He doesn't want spin. He doesn't want bravado. He just wants the truth as that person is able to relay it. Well, sir, I know you're based in Charleston. I'm based in Atlanta. And I don't know if you have enough in me for an hour-and-a-half interview, but I'd be more than happy to drive up there just to shake your hand, sit on your set for 30 minutes. I think we could find some things to talk about. And for me, just to be in contact with an American hero with a great deal of courage, but also a great deal of humility. Well done, Shawn, and continued success going forward. Now I'd like to transition to this young lady who was actually the subject of Shawn's interview that I watched this weekend. Her name is Lindi Lee, and Lindi has a very unique story about not only her life, but the life of her family. So her family is originally from China. And her grandfather, and I believe it was on her father's side, was rather the victim of a rather tragic and unfortunate event. He was executed by the Communist Party because he asked a question in a local meeting. She herself cannot even disclose what that question was. It wasn't a materially great question, but it was asked by him, and it got someone so upset that they ordered this poor man executed. Well, her family was able to get out by her own admission, and they went to Sheffield, England. And there they stayed until they got permission to enter into the United States. Now, what makes this story so American is the fact that they got there with very little resources. The only thing that they had going for them were really three things: their intellect, their hard work, and their love for each other. And come hell or high water, they were going to be successful. Of course, they had Lindi, and Lindi, from a very early age, discovered she had a passion in life, and that was in politics. Now, understand, at 13 years old, now I can understand with Lindi because at 13 years old, I used to go and be with my parents on the weekend during election season. We'd work on campaigns, and we did marches, we handed out buttons, we did all the stuff that politicians do, or people to help politicians get elected. And I was one of them. But where we kind of deviated was I kind of went the military track, because as I went older, I was attracted to going into the military. Now, I was too young to remember John Kennedy's assassination, but I certainly remember hearing his statement, ask not what you can do, or ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And by the age of 18, I was determined I was going to serve my country in the United States Air Force, which I eventually did. Lindi, on the other hand, went a different route to pursue her passion. She went to Princeton University, majored in finance, and did something which I really, at first blush, I find hard to believe. She was actually elected president of her class 4 times at Princeton. And then on top of that, got elected as alumni president of her class. That, to me, is just, it's so great, but yet, wow. But then, as a result of her success in business, she also had mentors within the Democratic Party. She actually ran for Congress at the age of 24. She lost, but she ran. That's a tremendous amount of courage. But as a result of that, she became a bundler within the Democratic Party. And what a bundler is that she had the ability to raise a lot of money. But see, here's the problem for her. In this last election cycle, and let me change our picture for a little bit, she did what is not done, or was not supposed to be done. She questioned leadership on what the heck happened to the election. Not because she was told that the campaign had a great chance of winning in some of the swing states, which ultimately was wrong. It was a lie that was told to her. But as a result of that, she now had to go back to convince the people that coughed up big checks and little checks. People that had relied on her word alone to be able to say, I can do this. I can deliver this for you. And ultimately felt betrayed by the Democratic Party leadership. Here's a clip that I think is very, very telling.
Why are you speaking out, and what are you risking by doing so?
I feel as though I'm one of the only voices speaking out, And if we do not confront the lessons of election night, it's going to happen over and over again. We're going to keep losing. If we don't recognize a rightward shift of America, we are also going to lose. We have to have a careful financial accounting of what exactly happened. How did we possibly blow through $1 billion in just 3 months? It's just astounding. I contributed and I fundraised for this campaign because I believed in Vice President Harris's vision of America. And by the way, I just want to say that I'm not blaming her at all. I think she's phenomenal. I truly do. And she's worked tirelessly. I'm talking about the way that her campaign was handled. In the next few months, we're going to have DNC elections and pretty much everyone's going to be out. They're just leaving, or for whatever reason, they're not going to be there.
I want to thank News Nation for the use of that clip. Of course, they own it. I claim no ownership to it. Forgive me, phone calls. But thank you very much for allowing me to use this under the Fair Use Doctrine. Okay, so why is that so important? The fact of the matter is that she basically said now to the party, and she outed herself when she came forward. Okay, so she's a whistleblower in a classic sense. She was an insider, she discovered that something was wrong, and now she's going outside and saying, I know that something is wrong. Please listen to me. So what did the Democratic leadership do for her? Well, they did a number of things for her. None of them good. A lot of them reprehensible. They went, now this is her saying this, so I'm only repeating what she's already publicly disclosed. But as a man, as an American male, who is also a father and a husband, if someone said this about my daughter, well, let's just say we're going to have a discussion man to man, okay? They went and they called her a whore. They called this woman the C word, which we know is the most pejorative term that you can say to a woman, to her face. They called her a turncoat, a sellout. This is a woman that has raised millions, if not billions, and all is she asking for the sake of her donors, is a proper accounting on how the money was spent. And you know, as the results, and I think that there's still going to be more results to be coming out, they wasted so much money. The difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris was Harris had to buy publicity to get people to show up. Trump, all he had to do was saying, I'm having a rally and I'd like for you to come in. Now remember, in 2016, the media was infatuated with Trump. They thought he was nothing more than a buffoon. They would set up literally having the cameras ready on an empty mic, just waiting for him to show up and somehow blow up. He didn't. There were a couple of times they castigated him, one for his actions for a person that was disabled. Okay, I get it, that wasn't cool, Mr. President, okay? But hopefully we've learned from that, right? But the thing was that Trump got nearly $2 billion in free advertising in 2016. So what does he do now in this election cycle? He listens to his son, Barron. And Barron says, Dad, you need to go on Rogan. You need to go on all these podcasts. Now, did Dad put up a fuss and say, oh, no, I can't do that. It's going to interfere with my schedule? No. Matter of fact, Trump, when he went to Rogan in Austin, actually held up a rally, but he felt it was important. And you know what? His people forgave him. Because once he went on Rogan and had that chance to have that exchange of ideas man to man, come on, as they say in New York, forget about it. So here's the point. This poor woman is being castigated. In the interview that she did with Shawn, she mentioned that the stress was getting so bad, it is affecting her on a bodily way. And that's purely understandable. None of us are indestructible. You go and you put enough stress on a person's body, and that body will physically start to break down. I'm not going to mention the bodily function, but I'm just saying, my question to her is, Lindi, are you losing your hair? Because I know with women, when they're placed under a lot of stress, one of the first reactions is they tend to lose their hair. Their hair will literally fall out. And I hope to God that's not the case with you. But the fact of the matter is that they are castigating this poor woman. And I'm offended by it. I'm offended because this woman who has the courage to be able to speak her mind in a party that quote unquote values diversity. Well, isn't her opinion part of the diverse universe you're talking about? Isn't her ability to say, sorry, I'd like to get these questions answered, instead of them going, they are doing to her intellectually what the Communist Party does in China. They're going to isolate you, they're going to put you away, they're going to shut you up, either temporarily or permanently. So, Lindi, let me share this with you. This is a definition of how the Bible defines a hero. It is a person of helping those in need, buttressing the weakness of others with our strengths and vice versa. It is contributing to the welfare of our neighbors. And these are all kind words, but being a hero really means being a helper, a supporter, and a friend. Now I know, Lindi, that you must have tons of friends. You should. You are a beautiful woman. And I don't mean just beautiful, just that you are beautiful in a physical way. You are a beautiful woman. Okay? But what makes you even more beautiful is that your beauty radiates from inside your very soul. Now, I understand you are a Christian, as Shawn says that he is a Christian, and thank you for being that. See, the problem that we face now in the political space runs down into 3 words, and it's simply this. The first word is moral. And what we mean by moral is that you have a moral compass that guides your actions. You, by your own faith and admission, place boundaries in your life that you will not cross, no matter what. So, for example, okay, you don't steal from your neighbor. That's a boundary. You will not cross it, okay? That you will not go and lie to people, that you have integrity. These are all boundaries that you have placed upon yourself based on the moral compass that you follow in the way that you will interact with the world. Okay? The second word is immoral. When a person is immoral, it means that they are acting in such a way that in spite of that belief system that they had, will go and cross that line. They'll go over that fence. They'll then go out of the defined border. So, for example, if you accepted the premise, I will not lie, and then you turn around and lie, you are committing an immoral act. Now, as Catholics, in order to commit a mortal sin, you have to have 3 things. You have to have knowledge of the sin. You have to understand why the sin violates God's law, and that you did it with the intention of doing that. So, for example, I knew it was a lie, I justified the lie, and I told the lie, right? that would be the grounds for committing a mortal sin. That goes and severs your relationship with God. It relieves you of the sanctifying grace that you were given by virtue of your baptism, and it puts you outside of God's boundaries. Now, I understand my Protestant brethren may have some difficulties with this, but this is what I believe as a Catholic. But guess what? We can restore that with God, and it's called the sacrament of confession. Now, again, Protestant brethren will say, I don't need to confess to a priest. I can confess to God directly. Yes, you can. But I would also enjoin you to read John 6, when Jesus went and said, I give you the power to forgive sins. Whatever you forgive on earth will be forgiven in heaven, and whatever you allow loose on earth will be allowed loose in heaven. Okay? By receiving that sacrament, that outward sign of God's love for us and his mercy, we are restored back to a state of sanctifying grace so we can move on. Okay? So here's the thing. The last word is now amoral. And that is when a person has no moral compass, has no regard for a moral compass, and literally could care less. I believe, and at this point I want to address you not as Lindi, because I don't know you personally, but I would like to address you as Ms. Lee, with all proper respect. Ms. Lee, what they are doing to you is amoral. It is unconscionable, and on behalf of people everywhere that are seeing you suffer, we offer you our gravest condolences and our gravest wish that you would embrace us as we want to embrace you. We want to be the ones that say how much we love you and what amount of courage it took for you to do what you did. And I know that you are suffering. You're suffering physically, you're suffering mentally, you are suffering spiritually. Well, ma'am, I'd like to give you a little bit of hope. In the Catholic Church, we have a term called heroic virtue. And the definition of heroic virtue is how the saint candidate to be considered for sainthood lived their lives in such a way that not only inspired people to come into the faith, but even how much they embraced the faith in their adversity in life, such that they led not only their own soul to God, but to others. Padre Pio, St. Francis of Assisi, St. John Vianney, the cure of Ars. But there have also been Catholic women, St. Agnes, St. Cecilia, St. Perpetua, who was actually pregnant when she was slaughtered and received her martyrdom. Yes, we have a saying in the Litany of the Saints, holy men and women of God, pray for us, men and women. Well, Ms. Lee, I want to give you a new title, a title that you didn't expect, but you are a Christian. So if you not have heard it before, let me give it to you now and let me share it with you. You are a saint in training. You're not a saint yet because you're not in heaven, but you are a saint in training. And therefore, whatever tribulations you will have to endure in this life that you yourself did not cause. And let me just share with you this last example that she shared on how much garbage, and trust me, that is a PG version of what I want to say, how much garbage this woman is endured. She actually reported to the Philadelphia Police Department that she was being pelted with rocks in Philadelphia. Well, why is that so important? Philadelphia is a Democratic city. It enjoys an 8-to-1 ratio between Democrats and Republicans. in this city, if it is considered sport to throw rocks at women, Katie, bar the door. No one is safe. And yet, this is the same party that constantly complains about people's right to defend themselves. You know, I am just aghast. You know, the word hypocrite actually comes from the Greek word, and I don't know very much Greek, but I do know that the translation translates into the word actor. That hypocrites are effectively actors, right? So if I act concerned, but I really don't give a damn, I'm acting a part. I'm conveying a false sense of some sort of humility and empathy. Unfortunately, I believe this leadership is so hypocritical. Because if they are willing to hang out a young woman of your stature, of your breeding, of your intelligence, of your pedigree, if they are willing to hang you out like yesterday's garbage because you don't serve their terms anymore, ma'am, you have an alternative. Now, I know that you are faithful to your mentors in the Democratic Party. Ma'am, I respect that. I understand. But you know what? As a Christian, at some point, Saul became Paul. The young man that was passionate about his faith to the point of killing Christians in order to justify his own sense of righteousness was touched by that very God. And it was said to him, Saul, Saul, why are you attacking me? That was when Saul became Paul on his way to Damascus. And every January 25th, we as Catholics celebrate the feast day of the conversion of St. Paul. And St. Paul later went among the Gentiles, and apart from the apostles, converted what is now the Gentile church into Christianity. Well, ma'am, I'd like to ask two things of you to consider. One is that you become a Republican, because I believe that we would welcome you with open arms. Not only would we welcome you, we would protect you. We would be able to do those things for you that your hypocritical Democratic former friends cannot. We can love you, we can protect you, and we can support you. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you consider becoming a Catholic. I believe that you would be a sterling example to young women who are struggling with so many different issues. And I think that young women would look up to you. Now again, you are now a saint in training, or you were, you just didn't know that. We are not asking you to be a martyr for the faith, but I think that if push came to shove, like your grandfather, I believe he is a martyr, and I believe that he is in heaven, because I serve a God that is loving and full of mercy, and also a God of life. Ma'am, I want to go and share this one last slide with you, if you will. This is from Archbishop Fulton Sheen, and I think it so adequately represents not only what's happening in this nation, but really with the Democratic Party. It says, what our Lord said to Judas, he says to the world today. You are seemingly so interested in social justice. Why are you not concerned with individual justice? You love your neighbor, why don't you love God? And you and I both know that our calling involves being able to love God as well as our neighbor. You know, you had so many questions that you were asking about, and maybe some of them will be unanswered. But I hope the one question I will ask you right now is, ma'am, will you become a Republican? And then at some point, will you become a Catholic? Because that man, Archbishop Fulton Sheen, used to end a program that was Life is Worth Living many years ago. But at the end of every show, he would say, God love you. Well, ma'am, on behalf of myself, on behalf of many, many righteous people that hopefully will see this video, we love you too. And we hope that not only Almighty God protects you, but then also you will be so much of a greater example. You think you are great now and not in a non-human, in humility, because you are. But I think that you are destined for further greatness, and it will be an absolute joy to witness that journey so far as I'm alive. So folks, again, thank you for tuning in. It's always a joy doing this podcast, and God love you each and every day.